Many words describe NVIDIA: game changer, trailblazer, disruptor, and most importantly, the leader of the AI revolution. In this case, we'll go over how NVIDIA nearly went bankrupt. In January this year, NVIDIA experienced a whopping $600 billion loss in market cap in a single day because of DeepSeek, who built an advanced AI model at a ridiculously low cost of just $6 million. And now, geopolitical turmoil from US President Donald Trump's tariffs further threatens the company and its supply chains. But this recent scare pales in comparison to NVIDIA's struggles in the 90s, when the company struggled to survive. NVIDIA was once 30 days away from bankruptcy, and had to cut half of its staff. We'll go over how NVIDIA narrowly escaped bankruptcy and grew to be the titan it is today. Welcome to the Executive's Casebook. Before the AI craze, the 90s saw the rapid emergence of the personal computer. Famously, the three co-founders of NVIDIA met in a Denny's to found NVIDIA in 1993. All three had vast experience in engineering and chip design at leading chip companies, including AMD, Sun Microsystems, LSI Logic, and IBM. The three saw that video games were becoming one of the most challenging computing problems that would require extra computing support beyond the main CPU. Also during this time, there was a shift from 2D to 3D gaming, which the three sought to capitalize on. This era saw over 70 competitors competing in the graphics acceleration field, but only 2 survived into the 2000s. NVIDIA needed to choose what type of geometric primitive their first chip should use. Geometric primitive refers to the geometric shape the chip system can handle. There was no standard in the market, but NVIDIA narrowed their choices into 2 options. Triangle primitives were more common in the industry and was favored by many of NVIDIA's competitors. Quadrilateral primitive mapping was less common, but was used in Sega's most recent console, the Sega Saturn, and Sega arcade games. Why was Sega important? Sometime around NVIDIA's founding, Jensen met with Irimajiri, the CEO of Sega, and left an impression on him. Sega was looking to port some of its famous games to the PC with quadrilateral primitive mapping. Sega also was looking to develop the Dreamcast to counter Sony's widely popular PlayStation, and heavily implied they could use a similar chip in the future for that console. So Sega could end up being a big customer for NVIDIA if they went with quadrilateral primitive mapping. Which choice would you make? NVIDIA ended up going with quadrilateral primitive mapping for their first chip, the NV1, and development started in 1993. This was a huge bet, and in late 1994, the bet paid off. Sega formally selected the NV1 chip as they brought some of their games to the PC. By July 1995, NVIDIA released the NV1 chip. Diamond Multimedia, a leading add-in board vendor at the time, agreed to use the NV1 and ordered 250,000 units. However, this chip ended up being a failure. Let's dive into why. Microsoft was looking to release the Windows 95 and announced the DirectX API, essentially making triangle primitives the standard for rendering. With everyone flocking to the new Microsoft DirectX standard of triangle primitives, demand for the NV1 dried up quickly. Diamond Multimedia returned nearly all 250,000 units they ordered, bleeding NVIDIA dry. Yet, you wouldn't believe how much worse this gets for NVIDIA in a few years. Although the PC market had largely gone with Microsoft's DirectX platform, NVIDIA still could hope that Sega would go with their chips, with their unique quadrilateral primitive mapping. NVIDIA had to make a choice. Should their chips continue to use quadratic surfaces as the geometric primitive? After all, Sega had just ordered the NV1 to port their games to the PC and used quadrilateral primitive mapping in their most recent console, the Saturn, and they could use it again for the Dreamcast. Or should they pivot to the now industry standard of triangular primitives for their next chip? Option 1 had a good chance of capturing Sega's business, but the second option had a good chance of capturing more of the PC market, although there was intense competition. What would you choose? NVIDIA chose to go with the first option, developing the NV2 for Sega's Dreamcast console. By this time, because of the failure of the NV1 chip, NVIDIA began cutting its staff as the company faced a cash crunch. After a year of development for the NV2, Irimajiri met with Jensen and disaster struck. Sega chose not to go with the NVIDIA chip for the Dreamcast GPU. NVIDIA was out of cash and out of options, and Jensen was forced to cut his workforce in half. However, the same person who turned down Jensen gave NVIDIA a lifeline. Irimajiri believed in Jensen and convinced Sega to provide NVIDIA an additional $5 million injection of cash in exchange for stock, giving NVIDIA 6 more months to live. By this time, there really was only one path forward. Develop a chip that used triangle primitive mapping. And NVIDIA did just that with their third chip, the NV3, or known as the Riva 128. By the time the NV3 was released in August 1997, the company had 1 month of payroll left. This chip was truly their last chance. NVIDIA had no customers and very few staff left. The NV3 not only was fully compatible with Microsoft's DirectX, it was able to successfully offload a lot of the CPU's computing load at an affordable cost. The NV3 doubled the initial spec of 3DFX's Voodoo, the leading graphics acceleration chip at the time. Diamond Multimedia stuck with NVIDIA this time and was their add-in board launch partner. The NV3 was a success, providing NVIDIA with much needed cash and revenue. This chip truly was the pivot point in NVIDIA's story. NVIDIA ended up acquiring 3DFX in 2000 in a major turn of events, and Sega later ended up selling their NVIDIA stock in 2000 as well for $15 million. It was a good return on investment, but that same stock would be worth $10.4 billion today. Afterward, NVIDIA began trending upwards as they made chips for the booming gaming market, finally hitting a home run in 1999 with the GeForce 256, the first GPU as we know it today. NVIDIA grew to be the leading provider of GPU chips in the gaming market. However, today, it's their AI chips that drives all the hype around the company. All this excitement stems down to the potential of AI. With a significant lead against its competitors, NVIDIA's chips and ecosystem is seen as the best option for any AI research or integration at any company. With much demand, NVIDIA can call the shots on pricing its limited chips. But as DeepSeek has shown, that demand could waver as companies become more efficient at building models that require less capital and computing power. Coupled with economic uncertainty due to US President Trump's tariffs, NVIDIA now faces several major headwinds that could hamper its success. Regardless, NVIDIA has shown in its most recent earnings that it can withstand these headwinds and still be successful, and as a result, NVIDIA is currently the largest publicly traded company in the world, ahead of Apple and Microsoft, with a market cap of nearly $4.8 trillion. NVIDIA keeping its technological lead, combined with the reversal of isolationist US economic policies, will contribute to its long-term success as the AI transformation continues around the world and hinges on their chips.